There's something special that happens when you force a color to come to a common ground with both of its enemies. That's why I've always found wedges to be so interesting, as there's this inherent conflict within each of their combinations. Over the past few months, I've spent time doing deep dives into all 5. You all enjoyed it so much, so I've decided to compile each one into one long video so you can get immersed in the interesting ideas that each wedge produces. So sit down, get comfortable, and let's talk the Wedges of Magic the Gathering. It's important in any discussion around the color pie to look at how any color or combination is implemented in the game before we can even expand on those ideas into abstract ones. When it comes to wedges, I find the best place to look are 3 different areas: the core faction that gave the combination its name, a reoccurring character made up of those colors, and the most common creature type or class within that combination. For the first example, we will look to the Order of the Jeskai Way, an order of monks on the plane of Tarkir, represented by the Eye of the Dragon, which symbolizes their vigilant watch over Tarkir. These monks also govern themselves by 3 core principles: discipline, enlightenment, and hard work. They are a faction that harness the restless fire of red and put it to work with the temperament of Azorius. The best example of a character within these colors also comes to us from Tarkir, and that is Narset, a master martial artist and genius mind. So much so that on the timeline of the dragons, Ojutai chose her specifically to be his apprentice, noting her potential for limitless growth. You see, Narset is an example of someone who is able to put to work that curiosity, diligence, and energy to make something great of herself. Our final example, and the most common type in Jeskai, is the monk, which more or less aligns with everything we spoke of so far. You see, the monk in magic, and really even in our own world, is a person who marries both mental and physical fortitude. They are people who are devoted to a single way of life and live with discipline to achieve it. These examples in the game really do help paint a picture, but you know me, I want to dig even deeper still. So based on what we know of the color pie and these examples, I want to present 3 versions of Jeskai, each that leans slightly more into one of its 3 colors. Reason and emotion are often the greatest of enemies, clashing at every moment like a storm within. For some, one overtakes the other, but for a Jeskai-aligned person with a red focus, that side of them cannot be extinguished, no matter how strong the Azorius side of them may wish to do without it. This can sometimes create an inner turmoil of sorts, a clashing of action versus thought and diligence. This Jeskai soul is looking for structure, and yet there's always this unsettled fire burning within them at all times. Perhaps early in life this was a part of them that was difficult to handle, a conflict always rumbling below the surface. But over time they would learn to appreciate this aspect of their nature, and in fact, leverage it. With the help of their Azorius side, the red within can be used like an engine of motivation. You see, white and blue's weakness is that they're slow to act, but when red is wedged between, there is a true motivation to get better, to be better, and to always move. This blend of thought and action, of restraint and passion, is what makes a Jeskai soul with a red focus so fascinating. This does bring with it a sense of progress, albeit one that is earned through constant struggle. The Azorius side of them might yearn for order, but this red side keeps them moving, keeps them pushing to do more. Together, these colors form someone who can envision a better world and has the courage and energy to fight for it. Structured experimentation is where thought meets action, each strengthened by the other in a deliberate dance of innovation. For a white-aligned Izzet person, creativity isn't left to chance. It's sharpened, refined, and given space where it can be tested. While the raw energy of Izzet's innovations might thrive in chaos, this version of Jeskai insists on some structure, a structure that transforms fleeting inspiration into tangible progress. Here, creativity finds a partner in discipline, and the two work hand in hand to ensure that every idea has a chance to flourish, not as a whim but as a foundation for something greater. It's not enough to dream, those dreams must be built, and built in unison with those who share your vision. This white-aligned version of Jeskai is the promise that no spark of genius will be wasted, for within its framework, every possibility is given space to be cultivated by the guiding hand of white. As such, the relentless curiosity of Izzet becomes tempered but not restricted. This balance ensures that creation is more than just a pursuit for its own sake. It's about making something meaningful that lasts and perhaps inspires others to reach for their own spark. To those who embody this mindset, the journey of creation is not reckless, it's intentional, guided by a belief that the best ideas are those that inspire and endure. Militant enlightenment is the restless pursuit of knowledge through action, a philosophy where intellect sharpens resolve and purpose is forged in the fire of discipline. For a blue core Jeskai soul, enlightenment is not a tranquil state, but an ongoing struggle to evolve. What we know of Boros is that it's a pair that embodies its ideals with fierce devotion, while blue gives focus to this action with boundless curiosity, constantly questioning, refining, and striving for more. Together, they create a momentum that turns ideals into reality, with each step forward guided by a hunger for understanding and the courage to act upon it. This is a life lived with intensity, where knowledge is not only sought, but also wielded as a tool to achieve more, each lesson shaping the you that you wish to become. To embody this version of Jeskai is to harden oneself, embracing the discipline to always push past your limits. Here, the hunger for understanding isn't a passive craving. It's a force that drives them onward, making every challenge an opportunity to grow. This combination doesn't simply ponder ideals, it lives them, proving that intellect paired with conviction can achieve a brilliance neither could reach alone. The Jeskai philosophy weaves together thought and action in unique ways. It's a philosophy that's always pushing on for a better self and a better world. It's about constant motion, testing limits, and iterating on oneself. For what good is a sturdy ship and a well-crafted sail without the wind to push it forward? Sure, there's always this underlying restlessness of perhaps feeling not good enough or having achieved enough. But it is that same inner fire that is the reason that this sort of person can achieve something great in the context of their own life. So embrace that fire and hone your mind through discipline, because it will be just that which makes you into the person you always wished to become. In order to best understand a combination of colors in Magic the Gathering, we should first look to how it's represented in the game. Think of it as the building blocks for a deeper discussion. To this end, I like to pull up three main examples. The first being the core faction that gives this combination its name, a character who best represents these colors, and finally the most common creature type within this combination. With these, we have three vectors to gain a base understanding of Mardu. For the faction, we are lucky because with our return to Tarkir, we get to see this combination in action with a fresh approach from the last. The Mardu of old lived by three core tenets: to conquer is to eat, victory or death, and to rule is to bleed. While the Mardu of the Dragonstorm era lives by three similar yet more nuanced ideas: loyalty is earned, community is strength, and victory is survival. By merging these concepts and finding the common ground, we understand that Mardu is a clan where strength is a way of life, that devotion and heroism are the greatest traits, and that we're only as strong as our weakest link. From here, I would like to point to the character Kalia. Kalia is a fractured soul whose righteous fury has sent her on a path of revenge. Bullied for her disabilities as a child, she always felt like an outsider. When she used her powers for good, she ended up failing to stop a great evil, one that killed her family and destroyed her home. Her hate and desire for revenge is what keeps her going. Kalia is an interesting figure, a physical manifestation of each of the colors represented within her, but I do think it shows the side of white that looks for retribution, the side of red that is emotionally charged, and the side of black that is unflinching in its resolve. Our final example comes to us by the way of a tie between knights and warriors, which I think is fitting. You see, knights are people of devotion who value a code and live rigidly by it, while the warrior values strength and lives life by the way of exerting its prowess to achieve what it wants. These two types coming together solidify this concept of devotion and strength. Alright, now with these examples, something concrete is beginning to form. A base, if you will. But you know me, I like to dig even deeper still, to truly understand what sort of way of thinking can come when you combine white, black, and red. To this end, I will discuss 3 versions of Mardu, each leaning more into one of its 3 colors than the other. Like a quilt made with many hands, individual contribution and expression lead to a vibrant community. In a similar way, someone who follows the Mardu way values what the individual can bring to the whole, rather than ask them to be absorbed as a faceless entity of the whole itself. You see, Rakdos is a combination of the true expression of self, unflinching in who it is. In some cases, this can lead to a bout of selfish action, but when white is there to rein it in and push it towards the values of community, it finds a home with others like it. This is not some restriction made to shackle the individual's right to be themselves, but rather to show them that there is strength when we can come together towards a common ground, instead of going it alone. And that is the heart of Mardu, not just wild abandon, not just rigid structure, but the dance between the two. You see, Mardu sees where these forces collide and find a rhythm. It's not a compromise of self for the sake of unity, nor a sacrifice of unity for the sake of self. It is a celebration of both. It's the warband, the ride or die, the place where you're seen for exactly who you are and still welcomed into the charge. Not because you fit some predetermined mold, but because you bring something to the table that no one else can. It's a storm of personalities, a riot of voices, but when the call to ride comes, they move as one, not as a faceless legion, but as a thunderous force of individuals, bound by something deeper than mere obligation. You will never be the person you wish to be without an absolute devotion to your ideals. It takes discipline, drive, desire to reach for the very height of who you can be, and that is where this version of Mardu resides. It's not a way of being for the weak, it is a demand of oneself that pushes you to the limits of your potential. You see, Boros as a combination is one of true dedication, a combination of zeal who stands by its idealist way of being, while Black sets their sights on what it can get from this life. It's a pairing that is both the unflinching hand of self-actualization and of total resolve. But to walk this path is to accept struggle as a constant companion. Discipline alone is not enough. Discipline must be tested, reforged in the fires of hardship. Drive means nothing if it falters when faced with pain. Desire can wither in the face of failure. That is why this version of Mardu does not merely endure hardship, it thrives in it. Every obstacle, every setback is fuel, a challenge to be conquered, proof that you are still standing when others would have fallen. There's no room for doubt, no space for hesitation. The weak look for excuses, the strong carve their own way. To embrace this philosophy is to acknowledge that nothing is given, everything must be taken, forged through struggle and claimed with unwavering certainty. If you're willing to fight for what you believe, to give everything in pursuit of your ideals, then nothing is beyond your grasp. Loyalty is not born from a demand made by birth or law. It is based on trust and is a reciprocal act of devotion, a transaction made that states an expectation to one another. As such, this version of Mardu with its red focus states that my tie to another person is based on an understanding that they will give all for you as I for them, and no less. Because you see, red is a color that goes all in, and Orzhov is a pragmatic pairing who focuses on equal exchange. Some people consider red a flimsy color, always following the winds of change. But the truth is, red knows what it wants and what it expects, not just of itself, but of others. When we introduce Orzhov, this then shifts to ensure that red is not taken advantage of, that loyalty is earned, and that trust, if broken, is returned in kind. If a Mardu person has your back, they have it fully, but they demand the same of you. Loyalty in this sense is not blind obligation. It's a pact, a fire stoked by mutual understanding. Mardu's red heart does not give freely to just anyone. It gives fiercely to those who have proven themselves worthy. It does not claim loyalty as an unearned right. Instead, it insists that loyalty is a contract written in fire and steel, in blood and promise. If you stand beside a Mardu soul, you do so knowing that your bond is absolute, but also that it is not given lightly nor cheaply. Mardu is more than just a banner under which warriors ride. It's a way of being, a philosophy of devotion, ambition, and loyalty forged through fire and will. Whether it manifests as a community of fierce individuals, a relentless drive towards self-actualization, or an unbreakable bond between those who have earned it, Mardu stands as a testament to the power of white, black, and red when brought together, where personal strength fuels shared purpose, where hardship is not an end but a crucible, and where the worth of one's word is measured in action, not empty oaths. Understanding Mardu is understanding the balance between these forces, the raw energy that comes from refusing to be anything less than what you're meant to be. It's a call to ride, to stand, to fight, not just for the sake of conquest alone, but for something greater. Because in the end, Mardu is not just about surviving the storm, it's about becoming it. Like I said, to best understand any combination in Magic and dig into what is hidden, we will first begin with examples, those being the faction who gave this combination its name, the most represented creature type, and a character who best exemplifies this combination. To the faction, we look to that of Temur on the plane of Tarkir. This faction is one who relies on savagery to maintain control over their lands, fighting like the animals at their side. The Temur also greatly value their shamans and see them as a direct link to their past and of time itself. While this faction seems to lean more into its Gruul side than the blue present, the shamans are in a way that link to the third color. When it comes to another example, that of the most common creature type, we can look to the elemental. These creatures are in touch with the natural world in a way that humans could never achieve, placing them in a realm that provides total perspective on all things, showing us what it means to connect with the heart of our creator. Our final example is that of Suruk, a member of the Temur faction. He represents a lot of what makes that faction what it is. He is a savage warrior who gains respect due to his prowess as the hunt caller, and fights alongside the bear Goreclaw. Once again, this leads a lot into the Gruul side. As you can see, when it comes to examples, we're shown a very narrow view of Temur, considering we've only really seen this faction represented on one plane, and that representation could be mistaken for just being Gruul with some extra steps. But there is something here, a concept that is based in a connection with nature itself, and one that mimics and even embodies its qualities. So when we keep these traits in mind, then splash in blue, my mind begins to wander, and where it lands is a representation of the combination outside of what we've seen in the game, but must logically be there based on what we know of the color pie. So let's start discussing what that looks like by talking about three versions of Temur, each who lean a little more into one of its three colors than the other, beginning with what happens when we do add blue to Gruul. But before we do that, I would just like to let you know that I started a second channel. It's a place where I can talk about my other love, manga and anime. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I will have a link in the description and a comment section of this video. Thanks for your time. Let's get back to it. Who are we but a collection of instincts and emotion, a result of our environment and experiences? To Gruul, these are questions not worth asking, as the result is evident. But what happens when blue is involved, I asked myself. Well, of course, a need to understand the root of those impulses. Let me put it this way. Have you ever done something before you've even had time to think about it? A reaction to someone else's action? We would call this an emotional response. Have you ever followed through with something even though you didn't spend time thinking about it, only to find it was the right course? This we would call instinct. These are aspects of our humanity that drive in the back seat, before our slow brain can have a chance to even register what happened. For some, this is done without any self-awareness or reflection, but to a Temur person, there is a need to know, a self-reflection that reveals the root of our deeper human motivations. So what happens when you can uncover the animal and evolutionary source of your actions? Well, you can further shape them or at least be at peace with them. This is the effect of taking gruel and adding blue to it. Blue is a color that needs to understand, to come to logical conclusions, and even though an action is taken through instinct or emotion, there is a logical root, a source of that act. A Temur person then sees the source, watches the action, and understands the result, providing peace in self through awareness of self. They see the animal that they are, the baser instincts that drive them, and are able to follow them backwards to reveal more about themselves. But the thing is that this understanding does not result in pushing against. This is because both green and red are colors of accepting the way things are, of who they are. Blue simply provides context to these actions, resulting in a greater acceptance of oneself. When green becomes the passenger to that of is it, things start to flip. Think instead of a person rooted in creative action, one who thrives on the act of discovery and self-actualization, while still approaching life with a simple wisdom. Oftentimes, is it on its own can result in someone with a sort of brain that can't sit still, one that is almost in conflict with itself. But when you add green, there's a chance to be rooted in the here and now, to connect with the wider world around you. This person then is one who can better flow with what comes at them, because at the end of the day, if their creative project leads nowhere, their actions or ideas lead to failure, they can still fall back on their humanity, being alive and being present. To put it plainly, instead of being a storm, they are like water. They can crash and swirl, but eventually they will always settle into a rhythm. They will take the form of their environment and find that every endeavor is worth it, no matter the outcome, because they are at peace with their place. I see this version of Temur as the balance of oneself. The blue as the mind, red as the heart, and green as the soul. Of course, their nature, being rooted in is-it, is one that is hungry for experience. But green is the wisdom to find that there are greater truths outside of those experiences. So instead, what one must do is flow with every experience that comes, like water.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
When wisdom and intellect meet, you get simic. But what is the value of thought when it lacks experience? It is assumption based on observation, and as such, where is the value? The true philosopher is one who understands that to know is to experience, and to experience requires that one live their life and interact with others. To gain perspective through action, that is the belief of this version of Temur. While Simic on its own will tinker and ponder of its place and its future, it can be stagnant as both colors within are slow to act. Red then introduces some immediacy, and even more than that, an itch to experience, to live one's life in order to understand one's place. This version of Temur does not seek ideas locked away in pages. It values understanding through the rush of the moment, in the wind against one's skin, in the firelight of a story shared among friends. Where Simic may hesitate, Temur leaps, trusting that the only way to truly understand and shape one's world, one must be willing to collide with it head on, to climb, to run, to fight, to love, to feel the weight of each decision, not as a distant theory, but as a heartbeat in the chest. In this way, wisdom and knowledge are not just product of thought, but of experience lived fully, of lessons learned in the rush of life itself. And so, Temur reveals itself not as just another expression of raw strength or primal instinct, but as something deeper, a philosophy that embraces the full breadth of the human experience. It is the balance between thought and action, between discovery and reflection, between the fire that pushes us forward and the roots that keep us grounded. Whether it's understanding the instincts that guide us, flowing with the chaos of creativity, or seeking wisdom through the act of living, Temur reminds us that knowledge is not simply something to be studied, but something to be felt. It is a call to engage with the world, to throw ourselves into the unknown, and to come out on the other side not just wiser, but more alive. Whenever you want to truly understand something, it helps to see it in action, to study it through example. With that in mind, before we dive into the deeper philosophies behind Sultai, let's first look at how this color combination is portrayed in Magic the Gathering. By comparing the original Tarkir block with Tarkir Dragonstorm, we get two distinct yet related versions of Sultai. In the first iteration, the Sultai clan is ruthless, resourceful, and often cruel. They wield necromancy to raise armies, enslave the dead, and delve into forbidden magics to gain an edge over their rivals. Their ambitions lead them to make pacts with Rakshas, cat demons of immense power who demand a steep price. In this version, strength is carved from the darkness and wielded without mercy. By contrast, the newer Sultai of Dragonstorm hold a reverence for death. They believe that the end of life feeds the land and enables the next harvest. This version of Sultai leans into the natural cycle, treating death not as a tool for dominance, but as a force to nurture future generations, to preserve knowledge and pass it on. This shift in perspective shows how the same colors can express different values when approached with new intent. Looking to a common creature type in Sultai, we often see a blend of shamans and wizards. Their presence speaks to the union of cold intellect and primal insight. Wizards embody the calculated pursuit of forbidden knowledge, while shamans ground the wedge in nature's raw, cyclical energy. Together, they reveal a worldview where intellect and instinct are not opposites, but allies. One final example I want to highlight is Brokos, the forever beast of Ikoria. Brokos represents a more ancient, contemplative Sultai, one that flows with the seasons, not to shape them, but to move with their rhythm. It doesn't seek control, but connection. Brokos reminds us that true wisdom lies in patience, memory, and transformation. It's adaptable, and it endures. Now that we've seen how Sultai manifests across different settings, it's time to dig deeper into the forbidden knowledge that lies at the heart of this wedge. I'll be exploring 3 philosophical takes on Sultai, each leaning more heavily into one of its 3 colors than the others. Let's begin. The truth is impartial to morality. It hides in dark corners, festers in the abyss, and worms its way down forbidden corridors. If the most potent insights wanted to be found, they'd already lie in everyone's hands, rather than in the grasp of those willing to dig through the muck or reach out to the gods of old. Sultai, as a wedge, especially with blue at the helm, understands that there are veiled realities and suppressed teachings that others are too afraid to dredge up. Forgotten lore sealed in arcane rites, dust-choked manuscripts, and discarded faiths. This springs from Blue's pursuit of comprehension, of deeper principles, while Golgari reminds us that anything truly worth uncovering is often masked by society's refusal to confront origins that may be morally unclean. But understanding, insight, these are constants that predate us, old frameworks of being, rotted, abandoned, and left to molder in time. In our own lives, this philosophy asks us to accept that revelations don't always arrive wrapped in comfort or moral certainty. Often the most transformative ideas aren't new, but long suppressed, cast aside because they disrupted the narratives we clung to. To seek genuine clarity, we must be willing to look where others won't, to explore the uneasy places where long silenced voices still echo. And when we uncover what we once sealed away, we may find it unsettling. But insight doesn't promise ease, it offers truth. The Sultai perspective teaches that wisdom may fester where others only saw corruption. To walk this path is to become fluent in uncertainty, patient with silence, and unflinching when old revelations begin to reshape who we were meant to be. I am who I make myself to be. That is the motto of the black-focused version of Sultai. You see, evolution is not just a matter of nature to decide. It's also a personal task that can be given, a frame to live one's life in a way that sheds the inefficient. It looks to how nature is one to adapt and specialize to its environment, and believes that such a task can be taken with expedience in one's own life. Where black is always aiming for what it can become, Simic is tasked with manipulating oneself to meet that end. To take what nature has provided us, an individual, and shaping it in a way that meets a greater end. It no longer just wants to see what it could become out of curiosity, but rather wants to use the tools provided to become the strongest, smartest, and most dominant thing alive. Where Simic holds the belief that evolution has a destination and that it can be guided, Black urges it to meet this end with expedience. I believe there is something deeply human in this Black-focused version of Sultai, because at some point most of us feel the urge to shed what we were, like a snake shedding its old skin. To look the person in the mirror and think, I can be more than this. It's the drive to self-optimize, based on the strengths we were born with, to enhance oneself. This gives them the drive to learn new skills, drop bad habits, change one's body, mind, or identity, not out of shame, but because you refuse to stay the same. It's not enough to adapt to the world. You want to rewrite the rules you were given. There's power in accepting who you are, but there's greater power in deciding who you become, to craft a version of yourself you can be proud of. The future can only be shaped by those who understand the past, those who can iterate on what came before and have the willingness to pass along their ambitions to those who come after. Greatness is not always something that speaks in a void or flashes in the pan. It can be something crafted with intent over time, through generations of those who think forward while holding on to the knowledge of those long past. In Sultai, there's an ancient and quiet way of finding growth through standing on the shoulders of the elders who carved the first path. This is where Green and Temur find common ground, in this belief that ambition doesn't have to be loud. It can be cultivated with time and intent, something rooted in the old way. Ambitions that last, the kind that is inherited, cultivated in silence, and grown across generations. These are the secret orders, the bloodlines with forgotten names. Sure, it can sound like a fantastical take, but it has applications for you and I in the real world, showing itself as the quiet legacy. It's the person who builds something that outlives them, who doesn't need the spotlight but still makes every decision count. It's long-term thinking, building skills, systems, and reputation over time. It's ambitions passed from parent to child or mentor to student. And in a world that often celebrates the loudest voice or the fastest to rise, there's power in choosing the slower path, one of depth, continuity, and purpose. The Sultai perspective reminds us that real legacy isn't always seen, but felt. It's not just about what we accomplish, but what we leave behind for those we'll never meet. In that way, even the quietest work can echo across time, carrying forward the ambitions of those who came before, refined by each generation brave enough to listen. What Sultai offers is a unique way of seeing the world. It teaches us that nothing worth having comes clean or easy, that truth is often hidden because people are afraid of what it reveals, that change isn't just something that happens to you, but something you can carve into yourself with enough will and time. And that ambition, when nurtured across generations, can become something enduring, something sacred. These philosophies may seem cold or unfeeling at first glance, but there's a strange kind of hope buried within. The hope that we're not bound to what we've been told, that we can learn more, become more, and leave more behind than anyone thought possible. And if we're willing to dig, to change, and to remember, then we get to help shape what it becomes next. You know the drill at this point. Before I begin breaking Abzan down into its fundamental parts, we'll first want to take a look at how it's represented in the game, as you can't build a house without a foundation. To do that, I will cover the faction that gives this combination their title, the most common creature type or class that comprises these colors, and finally I will select a character who embodies this combination's values, at least a version of it. With these, we can start talking about the deeper philosophy of Abzan. To start, as you may know, Dragonstorm gave us a new version of each of the clans established in the original Tarkir block. For many, the shift was drastic, but for Abzan, well, they seem to have established roots that have held into the modern day. The Abzan of old have learned that survival depended on the strength of the bonds around you. To them, family, duty, and loyalty are more than words. This version of Abzan moves like a millstone, slow and steady, and when they roll forward, they grind down anything in their past. But the contrast between new and old, as I've said, isn't so stark. because the Abzan of Dragonstorm also prize loyalty, endurance, and family above all, with every decision made done to secure their clan's survival. Even in death, they see it as their duty to guide and protect future generations. Parination is the belief in preserving life through cycles of birth and death, and it sits at the heart of their culture. As you can see, strong bonds are important to both versions, those that are created at birth and those that are secured through loyalty. If we then move to the most common creature type in this combination, we're met with the dragon. To me, the dragon type in this set of colors is all about strength and endurance. They are the immovable wall that outlives all, steady in its resolve and ever present in the shifting of times. Their power comes from patience, from knowing the longest lasting force is the one that holds. They do not flinch when the world changes, they endure, and in the end, they're the ones still standing. Alright, let's finally talk about an example of an Abzan character who can provide us with another take on the combination. For that, I have picked Anafenza. Anafenza is the embodiment of Abzan ideals, the belief that true family is chosen through honor, not just blood. After surviving the betrayal that destroyed her family, she rose through the ranks of the Abzan clan, not by force, but by earning the trust and respect of those around her. In battle, she would ride at the front of her army, proving she cared more about those she led than even herself. Even in death, she continues to serve her people as an honored ancestor, a guiding spirit carved into the roots of the next generation. Alright, I know that was a lot, but I bet you're starting to see a pattern here. So it's time to start talking big ideas by discussing 3 versions of the Abzan philosophy, where each one is driven by one of its colors more than the other 2. Are we a culmination of those that came before, guiding us in unseen ways? Could it be that our ancestors have laid a path for us to follow, whether that be a reflection or a motivation in? In some cultures, this way of thinking is a given, and whether we can manifest them to truly lead us or just call upon their wisdom passed on, one's lineage has substantial weight on who we are. Abzan believes that a family tree is more than a record of the past. It is the source of truth, where its roots are planted in each of its children. White as a color has a great respect for those that lay themselves out as an example for others to strive to be. But what if those that guide are long since past? Golgari is no stranger to the thought that what is buried still has value, and when its focus is community, it then looks to the lineage of great people for guidance, whether that is their direct family or the leaders of the communities it is a part of. Abzan doesn't revere the past out of nostalgia, but because it believes the future is built brick by brick with ancestral mortar. To honor those that came before is to embody their values in the choices we make now. In this way, legacy isn't a burden, but a birthright. We do not just inherit their path, we choose to walk it with purpose. The bonds of those we have by blood or loyalty are unbreakable, and anyone who would stand in the way deserves no kindness. For a community cultivated by mutual trust is the greatest treasure one can have. Whether that is the family one is born into or a community a person finds themselves within, it does not matter. For if we stand strong together against those that would aim to break our spirit, we are unshakable. This is the Abzan way, and it's no surprise with the colors that make up this black-focused version. You see, Selesnya is a combination that believes in coming together to foster harmony through intertwining with others to form a commune or brotherhood. It understands that the winds of chaos have no power when we interlock as one, while black demands 2 things: that this community be of those that share a common drive or goal, and that anything that opposes it is swiftly and ruthlessly dealt with. In the black-leaning Abzan, family or community is a pact to all within, sealed in action and reinforced through adversity. Here, the bonds that tie us to one another demand that each within act for one another just as they would for themselves, tested by the hammer of conflict and molded into an unbreakable steel, where only those who prove themselves are welcome fully into the fold. There is no tolerance for weakness that threatens the whole, but there is deep, unwavering protection for those within. To be part of this kind of kinship is to know that you will never stand alone. but also to understand what is expected of you in return. If one can quiet both heart and mind, all you will be left with is the underlying truth of all things. But thought, you might think, is the mechanism to uncover truth, and that heart is the drive to experience it. To that, Abzan says these are frivolous aspects of our humanity, and are but a filter we place over all things, one that is marked only by our personal experiences. What this means is that truth and purpose exist whether we interact with it or not, and in fact, our interaction with it changes the outcome of what we see. Instead of framing things through our own experiences, we must open our minds and quiet the noise. These concepts are not all too unfamiliar to green, you see, a color that is closest to the base form it was born into, while Orzhov is a pragmatic and practical combination, one who deals in absolutes, in the black and white of existence, if you will. To this version of Abzan, a combination that lacks both red and blue, the whims of one's passion or the distractions of abstract theory hold little value. Emotions can cloud and speculation can distort. What is left is that which endures, what lasts, those paths tested and proven by time. There is a resilience to finding the quiet space where truth resides, because within it you are unmoved by the whims of change. You are rooted in absolutes, the same that have lasted for eons past. You simply are and will be. So now, with the foundation laid and the pillars of white, black, and green having given their voice, we can see what truly makes Abzan stand apart. It does not shout, it does not race, it merely endures. In a world of shifting loyalties and fleeting ideals, Abzan holds fast to what lasts: lineage, loyalty, and truth. It is the promise that the strong protect the whole, and the wisdom of the past guides the steps of the future, and that when all else crumbles, those who stand together will remain. If nothing else, Abzan reminds us that legacy is not what we leave behind, it's what we carry forward every single day. Thanks for watching, and this marks the end of the definitive Color Pie series. Consider watching one of my other Color Pie compilation videos here. And with that, friends, I will catch you in the multiverse. Bye.